and then I can.
Okay, hello everybody. I'll call this meeting of the SBCC Board of Trustees Policy Committee meeting to order at 4 p.m. today, July 25th. Our committee membership, I want to note, has changed. We have Trustee Gallardo on the committee instead of Trustee Everett, who was previously on it. So just want to note that in section 1.1 for the public. Section 2, public comment. We do have a long agenda with 10 different subject on it, but if you have something to say in public comment that's not related to any of those 10 items, now would be the time to raise your hand and speak up.
I did get one request for a public comment from Jamie Campbell, if he's here.
Okay, is it for general public comment or for one of these items?
He did not say.
And you said he is here?
I don't know if he's here. He's
Oh,
supposed to be calling in.
Oh, okay, I see an 805 number. Jamie, is that you?
This is me on the 805 number. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we do. Is your public comment for general or for one of these items?
It's for 3.1, but
Okay.
because I'm on vacation, I wanted to give it right at this time, if that's
Okay.
possible.
Sounds good. I mean, that's the next one, so you can go first. So we're going to go to item
Okay.
3.1, which is infectious disease mitigation, administrative procedure, and board policy 3506. So you can go ahead as the first public commenter, and then we'll have everybody else raise their hands to get in line.
Great. Thank you. My name is Jamie Campbell. I'm on the executive board of the Faculty Association, and I was a member of the Return to Campus Task Force, which formulated the COVID mitigation plan for the college. We worked very hard on that this past spring. I want to talk about some of the language that's in specifically AP 3506. It says, quote, the superintendent president will follow the existing applicable disease management plan, unquote. I'm very much in favor of that language as part of the RTC task force. But I do want to point out that as you are discussing and hopefully enacting this BP and this AP, the college is currently not following the COVID mitigation plan that was formulated with broad support throughout the campus and broad representation throughout the campus. There are specific minor and then a major way that this plan is not being followed. For the sake of time, I won't detail these, but I will say that if a plan like this is for some reason not working, is not acceptable, or is a problem to the administration, then the plan should be changed with the involvement of the task force and not just ignored. As faculty are volunteering to teach in person and bring more students back to our campus, not following an infectious disease management plan is only going to make them not feel supported by the administration as they, are putting themselves out there for the sake of the students and for the college. And I'll just stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your public comment. Hope you enjoy your vacation. For everybody else we just had a few people join us. We are on agenda item 3.1, which is infectious disease mitigation. If you want to speak in public comment, please raise your hand now so that we can have a line. We'll have Lisa next.
Hi, I'm speaking today to bring attention to your egregious COVID policies that you are still enforcing on your campus and how it is negatively affecting the students and community. There really is something rotten going on at SBCC. Knowing that the school claims to care greatly about equity and inclusion, due to even my own experience attending the school from 2017 to 2020, I am seriously disturbed that your commitment to these virtues does not actually include everyone. I am part of the marginalized and shunned group of the unvaccinated, untested and unmasked. Because of this, many theater supporters, friends, and myself were unable to attend your summer musical, even though we've been big supporters in the past and have friends in the cast. We find it necessary to boycott your production and stop supporting your department due to your illegal policies. My friends and I also boycotted last year's music production and plays. We are very sad you have forced us to miss out on what used to be some very good performances, and you will continue to see fewer audience members and less income as time goes on. I am also not taking classes and thereby not finishing my interior design degree until these policies are lifted. The reason these policies are illegal is that, one, only a licensed medical professional is qualified to give medical advice, such as wearing a mask, which negatively affects the respiratory, neurological, and immune systems. I have a medical exemption for mask wearing due to my medical issues. And SBCC has no accommodations for my disability that are acknowledged for entrance to the theater. It is not up to the teachers union or the board of trustees to decide what medical procedures I must take. Number two, practicing medicine without a license is an offense punishable by law. Number three, there is no law in California that requires anyone to wear a mask into any business establishment, take an emergency use authorized only injection, or take an invasive test. Guidelines are not laws. Number four, equal access and accommodations into any business establishment whatsoever is protected by law. No citizen may be discriminated against based on a health condition under California Civil Code 51B. Requiring that I or anyone else be vaccinated, tested, or masked for participation in any activity at the school is a violation of federal law. These are merely guidelines and should have been seen as such since the beginning. Again, preventing entry into your theater based on someone's appearance, barefaced, or health condition, unvaccinated or untested, violates several laws under the authority of the Constitution of the state, the United States Constitution, Federal Civil Rights Law, Title II, Section 2000, the state's civil rights laws that prohibit discrimination. It is against the law to refuse entry to your establishment, which is open to the public. You are restricting the free movement of an individual and engaging in false imprisonment, unlawful restraint, and trespassing on personal liberty. Declaring this as your school policy does not absolve you from violation of the law. You are personally responsible for these infractions. Even if there is an emergency, no emergency supersedes our rights. It is my hope that you will take this seriously and immediately cancel all of your COVID protocols. Not even the state of California has any of these mandates anymore, and is even allowing concerts of over 1,000 people to go freely with no precautions. Please live up to your commitment for equality for all people and students, not just some preferred underrepresented groups. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Justin. And just to note, there's 5 minutes for public comment.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks for taking my comment and also for answering my emails, Mr. Aboud and Kindred. So I'm pretty disappointed in the policy draft. It doesn't have even an accommodation for religious beliefs or personal exemptions. So there's no exemptions even in your draft, which is, I think, the first legal problem. That's already been established in many cases. So that should be, rewritten immediately. It's just really, it's frustrating to see this because I've been asking for science for a long time and you've never have sent me one study, but I sent you tons of studies. I've sent you over 200 mass studies alone showing that they're not effective. Vaccine studies, I mean, there's even more. So where is the science? What are you guys basing this on? How are you justifying it? It seems like it's all political. I know all of you behind the scenes are Democrats and you hate conservatives. So is this just because of your political bias? That's what it seems like. Period. I mean, that's what it seems like, because of your hatred for conservatives. You're just trying to keep this policy in. So I urge you to stop hurting your community. Stop affecting all these other people that aren't political. They're just part of they're just stuck in the middle of it. Thousands of people aren't going to college right now because of your decision. Thousands of them. How do you sleep at night? I mean, how could you justify doing that to so many people in our community? And they're mostly disadvantaged people. You know, if somebody has all the money, they can go wherever they want. But guess what? If they're from our community and they're poor, they don't have an option. They have nowhere. Hancock is letting people go. That's in our county. Does that make any sense? That's where all the COVID was. 3/4 of the COVID was in North County. Have you guys ever looked at a graph? Have you ever looked at it? Because that doesn't show. It's not apparent. How can you even be elected officials without any care for the people who are being suffering from your decisions? You have no empathy, Jonathan? No empathy? What are you doing to these people? Kindred, what are you doing? How can you live with yourselves? I've sent you hundreds of studies. I haven't received one from you. Not one. That would be nice to get one thing that you've read. You said you're going by the science, Kindred. You said science. Where is it? Show us what you're basing this policy on. I haven't seen it. I look at science every day. I'm not a doctor, but I can read. None of you are doctors, but you're making a medical decision for people. I urge you to change this. Jonathan, please. I know you have some, I know you're a decent person. I appreciate you actually writing back to me. But this is political. We all know it. Because your guys are going above and beyond anything else that anyone's recommended. The only thing that I see good about this policy is it says you'll actually do what the CDC says, which is great, because then you'll actually maybe stop doing all the stuff that you've done above and beyond the CDC. So maybe we'll get some relief for these poor students. Change your policy. Give us this. You know, you guys got millions of dollars in CRT going. You know, you're not. You know, we're never going to break that. Looks like you'll spend as much as you want. Give us something. Give us a break here, so people can see that you're real humans and not just political pawns. I urge you, please change this policy. You know it's wrong.
Thank you, Justin, for your public comment. Does anybody else have a public comment they'd like to make? Please raise your hand on section 3.1, infectious disease mitigation. Okay, if there's no other public comments, Dr. Maria, would you like to introduce this?
Yes, I would, and thank you. I appreciate the board looking seriously at this. If you will remember, I brought this to you in the June board meeting, and I brought you the actually it was called the COVID mitigation plan, which is what was discussed a little earlier by Jamie Campbell. And what I did was, once that was completed, I brought it to the board, and we actually had a forum at the college at the end of spring around the mitigation plan. And we conducted a survey around where people are right now. And what we told the board was we were going to try to put resolution 1 into policy and procedure and actually point to a mitigation plan. After spending time talking with constituency leaders, the forum at the college, and talking with the board, what we heard pretty clearly was that we would like to see more of an aligning with the county public health department guidelines. And whatever we put in place, we want it enforced. And that we were going to keep the vaccine requirement for the fall while we did further research on the efficacy of the vaccines and how they are operating in the current environment with Omicron. And with all of that said, that's kind of where I've been heading recently. Is I notified the constituency leaders a couple of weeks ago that I wanted to alter the COVID mitigation plan to not require the N95, KN95 during medium and high tiers, that the issues around compliance, what we were seeing with people, it was not working well, and to go with the CDC mitigation, sort of their guidelines around masking, which is a high quality, tight fitting mask, or you could wear a KN95 or N95 based on your certain situations. Anybody can wear a mask at the college. The question was on whether we should require them in buildings. So that's part of this piece, because after listening to the board, I felt like I heard the majority of the board were in a place where you wanted to align more to public health guidelines, and you were okay with leaving the vaccination policy in place. So the policy and procedure, what we did was we only kept the vaccination component out of Resolution 1, and then the leave for employees, and that was per Liz's suggestion, that was in Resolution 1 for anyone that got COVID. And anyone knows who have COVID that you could be off work for 2 weeks because you're really sick. So we felt that that was an important piece to put in place. And then after direction from the board, we will bring back the policy and procedure for the board to either put in place, or we will keep operating under Resolution 1, because that's really currently what we're operating under. We're operating under Resolution 1 because we do not have an approved COVID mitigation plan. I have not brought forward a board policy, a procedure, and the mitigation plan, which is part of your emergency operations plan. So it does need to be board approved, because I have been working on altering that plan based on all the feedback I've received from constituency leaders and the board and community members. You've got a sampling today of my email almost every morning. So with that, would like to hear from the board members and what you would like to see, or if you don't even want a procedure, policy and procedure, then we just need to know that, so that we're bringing to you what you would like to see put in place based on constituency input and what our best thinking is at the time.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Murillo. So I'll turn it over to our committee to ask questions or make any points about this, but I do want to remind you all of what Dr. Murillo said, which is, I think a majority of the board did speak up in terms of directing us in this direction. This is what the board majority does want. Obviously that can change, but just want to note that we shouldn't deviate too far away, because then it might not get approved. So we should try to get something forward that will get approved. So Marcia or Veronica, do you have anything you'd like to bring up here? Yes, Marcia, please go ahead. I think you're muted.
Okay. It seemed to me that the board policy draft left out some of the key elements that we had, which I don't think are changing under the current guidance, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Murillo. The We had, for example, a 72-hour PCH test alternative for the public, members of the public to being vaccinated, I thought, as an option for attending a short-term event. Is that correct or not?
That's actually addressed in the mitigation plan. So we recommended in the mitigation plans, the actual details of that kind of level of detail. But if the board would like to see something carried over into procedure, I think we can accommodate that.
I think it's helpful to the public not to have to go all the way to a lengthy detailed plan to find some of those key elements. Another one would be that we did have an exception for a medical exception. And I think that is another thing that it would be helpful for people to see easily. I'm not in favor of, and I don't think we as a board discussed this, but I'm not at this point in favor of the exception we had for pregnancy, because the science on that has indicated that it's clearly a very greater risk for both the mother and the child not to be vaccinated. So I think we were going in the, this was early on, but the science since then has indicated this is not the way to go. Let's see what else. I expressed a preference for, and I guess you can put this under research because you are going to research things, but a preference for up-to-date COVID vaccination rather than full COVID vaccination. The full COVID, as I understand it, is the initial 2, but we're now moving into vaccines that are intended to be more specific to the current variant that is circulating. And that seems to me to be an important element. At some point, just going back to the original 2 is really not going to be as effective. Language-wise, in 3506, I would suggest the last sentence where it says the superintendent president will appropriately follow administrative procedure. I would just say will follow administrative procedure. I don't know what appropriately adds to that. And then in the AP, we're talking about following the applicable disease management plan. If none exists, the district will follow Santa Barbara guidance, county guidance. I would suggest that we also add in CDC and California Department of Public Health there, because I don't think we want to be out of step with either of those. And then we say until a plan is developed and approved, I would say by the board, because that's the process you just described, and otherwise it's unclear approved by who. And in the last section, I don't have a problem with the concept, the language, the new red language where it says paid leave entitlements. Due to a number of qualifying reasons, sends me off into, I don't know what that means again. And if there's a shorthand way of listing those reasons, again, for an easier way for people to see what they are than going to a long plan. And then students with a documented COVID case will receive similar and as appropriate concessions. I really don't know what that means. It wouldn't be similar because they're not getting paid leave, and as appropriate concessions doesn't tell me much or the student much what they might be able to expect. So I'm just, even if you have to go to a reference to the actual plan, if it's so detailed, you can't summarize it in the AP. I'm just trying to have something here that gives us more to hold on to.
Thank you. Can I ask a question of the board members here? Because one of the issues that I was trying to defer until fall when we had the entire faculty back was the issue of recency of vaccination. That was going to be part of our exploration in the fall around whether we should change our language from the CDC recommendation or to recency of vaccination. So that was some of the work we were going to work on this fall. Is that a problem for the board?
I think it's a fair question to explore, just like other aspects of this, like what Trustee Croninger brought up with the different vaccines that might exist. That maybe the original two yet don't even matter anymore. So yeah, so I think there'll be more information soon. Trustee Gallardo. You might be muted. Trustee Gallardo, would you like to?
Thank you, Jonathan. And I just heard from another parent today, Kindred. Can you hear me, Jonathan?
We can barely hear you. You're cutting in and out. Yeah, we're still not getting anything besides static from your end. Do you want to try calling in with your cell phone and connecting the audio to your cell phone? I'm gonna try texting Eduardo. Give me a second. I'm gonna try giving her a quick text. No, we're getting nothing from you. It's just static and you know, your voice is garbled.
Can you hear now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So the central issue continues to be access, and I do think
We lost you.
Wow.
Trustee Gallardo, do you want to try reconnecting maybe? We lost you completely. You want to try with a different phone or computer or using the audio phone call in? We're still not getting anything from you. Okay. She's gonna, I texted her to try reconnecting. So I think, Trustee Croninger, do you have anything else to say or response to Dr. Mira's previous comment on recency?
Well, I think it is an important issue. I think I read only today that the Biden administration is putting the under 50 second booster on hold because they think that the vaccines that are targeted to the variants, the most recent variants, are going to be ready sooner, as in mid-September. So, you know, the information is changing, and it makes sense to look closely at that and maybe update it. It may be that we want to update it sooner. It may be that it's too administratively difficult to do it sooner than at the change of semester. I don't know.
It would be better for us to allow for faculty and staff to come back and explore it with people here. I really don't like doing stuff in the summer without a full complement of people that you can have discussions with. And we did kind of promise people that we would look at the vaccination issue this fall, but we would keep it in place till December 31st. I would also note that we're watching colleges around us, College of the Canyons, Allen Hancock have both dropped their vaccination requirements. So that because of the efficacy right now of what's considered fully vaccinated. And so these are the things we just want to spend some time trying to continue to watch and hear and listen to the science and make sure we come to some good decisions this fall.
Thank you. Trustee Gallardo, do you want to try again? See you reconnected.
Can you hear now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this was like the perfect visual to capture what we hear from students all the time. When you force them into an online environment, this is what they get. And Santa Barbara City College, we're all very intelligent, dedicated people, and we really can think of something better. I think student trustee also echoed that same sentiment that we have to come up with something better for families and for students and everyone in the community. We have an exceptional team of medical professionals, and I'll tell you guys, I have not met one specialist, pediatrician, doctor, family practice that is pushing this on anyone. And I've spoken to more than a dozen of them across the state. And so to see Santa Barbara City College in this region push something like this so hard, you have to ask why. And I think that's what the community is wondering. Why is it that Santa Barbara City College wants to be remembered as this? I mean, everyone's going to die. We're all going to die one day. So when you're on your deathbed, like, what do you want to be remembered as? It was Santa Barbara City College, an institution that opened the doors to everyone, or was it an institution that really fell into other competing priorities? I don't know what those individual priorities are for the board, but I do know that this last year, speaking to my own employees and staff, there were people that after the second one, they just couldn't do it again because of the reaction they got. Families that were split. There's a myriad of
We've lost you
reasons,
again,
but
Veronica.
really, in the end, the folks, the presidents that I spoke to at Laguna when we were at the conference, Kindred knows, I mean, there's a lot of presidents that
The connection has gone bad again.
Yeah, we've lost you again. Do you want to, Trustee Garda, we lost you again. Do you want to try switching to phone audio? Like try that feature in Zoom where you don't use your computer's audio, but try your phone audio. It's around the mute button usually if you're on a computer. There's an option to switch to phone audio. It might come in clearer. Oh, she's gone. I'm gonna try texting her that. Okay, well, we're gonna move on for now to 3.2 until we can get Trustee Gallardo back and working to make her point on this, because we do have a very long agenda and limited time to do it all, and we could have another meeting, but we're all already here to do this. So I'll just chime in and say, like I said, I support what the board majority is already saying for this BP and AP, so which is the vaccine requirement and delegating the general operations to our superintendent, president, and a mitigation plan that we approve. So I think the policy gets to that point really well. Let's move on. Is there anything else anybody wants to bring up? Trustee Croninger or Dr. Maria, please go ahead.
So just real quickly, I know we have a lot on the agenda and there's no way we're going to get through all of this today in real meaningful conversation. And I've already had some issues come up on some items that we can wait for another meeting to address. It would probably be better to let me deal with some of the things that have come up. But I would really like to see us address 3 point, at least get some direction from the board and just in the idea of what you'd like to see in the equal opportunity wording 3420, which is item 3.2. And then the other one that I think is really going to be important for the future for you as a board is item 3.6, which is board policy and administrative procedure. How your board policy and procedures get addressed in the process they go through. Because I've heard there's been a couple issues about the flow on that. So that's a big one. And the other one that will really be timely is your 3.7 board policy 2431 superintendent president selection, because we are looking at a process next year. And so want to make sure that your procedure or your procedure is up to date as you want it to be. And would really like direction if you would like to have an item 3.9, which is the commitment to anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That those are some things that would really help us focus for your next meeting. So I apologize for loading this agenda so heavily, but I wanted you to kind of see the variety of stuff that we have kind of swirling right now with our commitment to anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and your hiring process.
Thank you. No, those are all good ones to focus on today. And I just wanted to ask if there's any like time limits or deadlines that anybody has for any of these, so that we could get through them at a time. Like, you know, I can keep going all day, but are we trying to end by 5:30 or 6 for this meeting, or when did staff plan to be here until?
My observation is 2-hour meetings for policy is pretty productive. Like, get focused, get the information and go. Otherwise, if you keep going, it starts going like this.
So we'll say 6 then. We have until 6, so we have some time. So I think you said 3.2, 6, 7, 9, and 10.
Yeah, those would be really helpful in getting us focused, and then we can kind of work on the other ones that I've had some questions and concerns come up on.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's move on then to 3.2, which is the equal employment opportunity. Is there anything to present on this one?
There are plenty of items in there. I don't have a presentation, but in the agenda, you will find a board policy and draft procedure. It is my understanding that we didn't quite follow the redlining that we should have. So we will follow up and make sure we do that from now on. Wanted to get feedback from the board on how extensive the board would like to be in your thoughts about equal employment opportunity. Some districts have taken this and really done a significant level of policy and procedure. Others have kept it pretty minimal. And so we took the work that you did as the Gender Equity Committee, and Joyce has helped kind of look at other college districts' procedures and take some of the better pieces that they have included in theirs. And we wanted to get some feedback from the board about, do you like your policies to be real minimalist in the sense of smaller and then your procedures being much heavier? And like, what would you like to see in these so that we know how to move forward?
Thank you. Trustee Croninger, go ahead.
Well, a couple of thoughts. Yes, generally speaking, I do like our board policies to be fairly compact, shall we say, and address specific points that we think are key. And so this draft of 3420 for me is just too long. And it feels repetitive in several respects. Harking back, moving backward, I would just like to, I appreciate you attached the, under this, at the bottom there, the ad hoc committee that Robert, Peter, and I worked on. We met for many months and we talked to a lot of people and we produced a report. And I think we identified some really fundamental issues that the college had not addressed. And some of those have in fact gone missing in these redrafts. First issue was that it was not clear that our general process for hiring, including diversity, equity, and all of the things we've been talking about, applied when you hire part-time employees, adjunct faculty, and student workers. In fact, they didn't apply. And so a really clear statement that they should apply seemed really important. And that's a very discrete sentence. I mean, we made a discrete suggestion. Also, equal pay for equal work. We got a lot of complaints, particularly from students, that they were, you know, some people were getting favorable pay for the same work that other students were doing and were not getting paid as much. So an equal pay for equal work statement seemed very fundamental. With student workers, we thought that there were two elements: equity and diversity, of course, and second, the preferred preference to qualified candidates with demonstrated financial need. Financial need was not coming into the equation except under certain programs. I gather that the federal work-study program does include that, but we hire students outside of that, and we hire them for various kinds of jobs which may or may not relate to their area of study or anything like that. And so it seemed to us that really, when we make those hires, we should be focused on students who need the money the most. Again, a kind of a straightforward concept. And last, we got complaints that some students, basically, I'm afraid this was the internet, some international students, and I'm sure it was very few, but enough to be concerned, had graduated from the college, received degrees, certificates, and so forth, and had more than 100 units and came back to be employed, signed up again for more classes simply in order to be employed by the college because they could not find employment in their area of major. And that meant that they were no longer eligible to stay in the community under the terms of their visas, as I understood it. And this represented basically an unfair situation for students who were coming through in the first instance for their degrees and certificates. And so we wanted to make a broad statement, which is the way we put it, that if you have over 100 units, you really don't get hired as a student worker. At that point, it's time to move out into the broader workforce. So I would like to see all of those elements in our, you know, whichever. I don't think they have to be duplicated in both, you know, 7270 and equal employment opportunity, but I do think at least some aspects need to make it real clear that what we do here is applicable to all our employee processes. Otherwise, we're just skipping, frankly, a huge portion of our faculty and other part-timers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for explaining that, Trustee Croninger. That helps with an understanding of what you're trying to drive at.
Yeah. And then I would mention in terms of the length of the draft for 3420, I don't think, I mean, I just think it needs to be distilled more. I don't think that the college can can, a board policy can impose requirements, and I'm missing where that is in here, but requirements on, here it is, Santa Barbara City College and its employees collectively and individually commit themselves. I don't think the board can do that. Employees individually can choose to commit themselves, but I don't think the board, as a matter of policy, gets to tell people they are committed to a particular viewpoint or set of values. In fact, it kind of runs contrary to our diversity goals to tell people this is the way you need to be thinking. So that concerns me. And also, when you get to the next paragraph, I would phrase the things that we do to support students is really the central motivating factor here. And the literature supports the idea, for example, that students do better when they see a diverse faculty and they see themselves in the faculty and employees, all the employees at the college. The literature, I'm sure, supports other aspects of diversity that that may help student success, but that's the touchstone, student success and why we do it. When we go beyond that, and there's a long list here, and in ways that include all the ways we should support students and help their success, and including neurodiversity, and I am very sympathetic to that particular concern. But I don't think that it also means you recruit and develop groups that are underrepresented in those areas necessarily. I mean, I do not know how you determine whether we are underrepresented in people, students or employees who are on an autistic spectrum, for example. It just doesn't translate easily. And I think we tend to think in other categories, but we have written it as if all of the categories might or might not be underrepresented. So I'm just saying, I think this needs to be shorter and more distilled, and some of the ways that we have expressed these things, focusing on student success as our purpose here, if we're going to discuss what that means.
Thank you, Trustee Croninger. I do agree that our board policies should be shorter, but they should be very direct and strong about what our position is. But yeah, just shorter in length, and then we can move a lot of this stuff to the AP. So I agree with that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great.
That
Okay.
helps. And Joyce, did you get a lot of that down? I know you're taking notes, so we're all taking notes, trying to make sure that the next time these come back that they're good to go.
Yeah, they look good. Do we have any public comment on this? 3.2.
Did we lose Trustee Gallardo totally?
She's disconnected and didn't respond to my text message. So
Okay, I'll keep trying to text her.
She must be in an unusual location to be having this much difficulty.
yeah. Okay, so we'll go next to agenda item 3.6, which is a fun one of policies on how policies are made. So I'm just looking at this, and it's, telling us that we've got a legal update that we had to make, which is that, we can't change a policy in the same meeting it's introduced, which makes a lot of sense. Are there any other points that you want direction on in this one? Or I thought this looks good overall, but is there anything specific you'd like us to comment on?
No, I just wanted to make sure. There was some reference at one point that about concern of whether the board could actually initiate policy changes, and it states that you can. I understand that's not always the practice at the college, but I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable with the fact that the language, the way it reads, that the board can actually initiate a policy change. It doesn't have to initiate with a legal change or BPAP. So if you're comfortable with that, that's what we want to know.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, we've initiated policies before, and especially policies that are also directly related to the board, like operations. We haven't sent those to BPAP in the past, I believe. But yeah, the board can initiate policies, and we have. But Trustee Croninger, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, this one has come through the board a lot of times previously, not during your lifetime here, Kindred, but many times. And so I think we have tried hard to craft a policy whereby both the board and pretty much anyone else can propose a new board policy or a change to a board policy, and that will be first discussed by the board conceptually, hopefully with a draft, because that focuses your concepts. And we're not real good at discussing something very well without something to look at. And then you send it to BPAP. And the point being, don't do a lot of work at BPAP on something that the board already thinks is not a great idea, or needs to move in direction X and you're going in Y. So, kind of get that impression from the board. These are board policies, and so the board needs to be comfortable with them. Get that understanding from the board up front, regardless of who initiates it, and then send it through the, basically the consultation process, and then it will come back to the board. And this idea that the board will suddenly amend something without another meeting is pretty rare. I'm not even sure I know it's ever occurred.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Do we have any public comment on this? Or anybody wants to comment? Okay.
Great. So that one can move forward with the legal update, correct?
Yes, Dr. Maria, I just wanted to point out for Trustee Croninger that language is actually explicit in item number 1 under the AP 2410 under recommendations, except for those changes coming via legal updates or the regular review cycle. All new board policies start with BP 2410 board review first. So that is actually captured here, and it is in specific detail.
No, that's good. Though I would suggest that some legal updates, you shouldn't assume that a legal update isn't a substantive thing. And some legal updates really need to be discussed with the board, because I have seen legal updates that in fact are not legal updates. They are mistaken about what the law says, or they are mistaken in terms of policy that you might want to have. So you have to make some judgment calls there. I mean, clearly BPAP can probably look at something and say, wow, this is a big deal, or they can say, this looks like a relatively minor change, or, we don't see an issue that needs to come to the board yet. So.
And not all legal updates are mandatory either. So
right.
Yes, there's that as well.
Great.
Okay, good. So just wanting to make sure that was okay in what you were looking at. And so that one we can move along. And that's always such an important one. So just want to make sure that one's good.
Yes, thank you. No, this is an important one. And then the next one's also extremely important, maybe the most in the moment right now, which is our superintendent president selection, which will come up way faster than we think. So we need to be ready for it. Are there any points on this one that we'd like to go over?
Well, I would comment that this is among the short board policies. And most of it is in the AP, which is perhaps a little unusual given the role of the board in selecting the superintendent president. I would not want the AP to suddenly change and the board not know about it, which can happen with most other APs. So it might be worth saying something to the effect that changes in the AP will be brought to the board for discussion before becoming final. And then I do have thoughts also on the AP itself.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead on that, we might as well.
Okay, this is what we have been doing. I think it reflects that. I think you would agree, Jonathan.
Yes.
The part that I feel like has not served us as well as it might is number 1. I think our experience with the search firms that we have hired hasn't necessarily been as positive as I would have wished. And so perhaps flexibility needs to be here so that we can make choices about whether or not we're going to use a search firm, or, you know, a greater indication of flexibility, because it's really, in my experience, been a mixed bag working with the consultants that we have had.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have worked with lots of different search hiring firms for college executives at UCSB and here a couple times, and yeah, it could definitely go way better. I think another one I'd say could improve is also number 2, which is the screening committee, because, you know, the final candidates, the board only sees the final candidates. And I want to make sure that screening committee is the most equitable for like composition that we could have. I don't, you know, it's been something that's been carried over multiple times, but I don't know if you've given it a critical look. Like, is this the most equitable composition? Some groups have 1, some have 3, you know, for example. And I also think that we discussed it last time, but we decided on a no, but it could be something to discuss again, which is, should a board member or 2 be on the screening committee? And I think yes at this point. So that's my input.
Can I make a couple of suggestions or thoughts on some things I've seen on board of these?
Please.
Is in the area that Trustee Croninger just mentioned, maybe have on that particular item on hiring of the search firm, that the first conversation should be the determination of whether to use a search firm or not. So it's just not, we'll generally work through human resources to secure the services, but just basically articulate that maybe a little bit better. The other one on the committee, I just want to point out a couple of things that if we're talking about being a more inclusive organization, one, you have non-credit faculty member appointed by the Academic Senate. That actually should be non-credit faculty appointed by the Faculty Association for non-credit. That would be more inclusive of making sure that is represented appropriately. The other one that concerns me is you don't even have a confidential classified employee listed on this list, and because the confidentials often work very closely with the board in the executive assistant positions, those should also, if you're talking about being inclusive, then we're including the FAN, the Faculty Association non-credit. We're including the other group of our confidentials, which have traditionally been excluded at this college. And that's kind of one of the first things that caught my eye here. And the fact that you only have 1 student listed, and most districts I have interviewed with or worked with have at least 1 or 2 board members on the screening committee, so that there is some board input, that usually 2 at the most, but you don't have enough students for sure. So just some things that I observed when I was looking at your policy and procedure.
What about adjuncts? It's not clear that we would have any adjuncts except perhaps the non-credit.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
could say that one of the 3 faculty members that the academic senate puts in would be an adjunct, and then have one come from the FAN, which is non-credit, so that you're really being inclusive there. Yeah, I'm all about inclusion, and so
I agree with all these points being made.
Yeah.
One question, Dr. Maria, I know you weren't here to tell us, and maybe Marcia, actually, but this says the AP was approved on June 18th, 2020. And I'm just trying to remember, we did that after we had done the last superintendent selection in November 2019, and we put this into place, but I don't see it having come to the board. I know we don't have to approve these as a board, but it does look like this was generated and approved, because it might not have even existed until more recently. And so I just want to see when, maybe if we can get a little bit of the history behind this, if possible, not right now, but yeah, it was approved June 18th, but the circumstances, I guess.
Yeah, it may not have come to the board. We could check whether there was a June 18th meeting and whether it did, but.
I just did, and there is not. So
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, so it says June 18th, 2020, but there was no meeting that day, 2020. There was June 11th and 3rd and 25th, but not 18th. So that's, I guess, to the point that you had of, yeah, we should maybe put this more in the policy end, just so that, or we make sure that this, put a stipulation in this AP that it has to go to the board for any changes, because I mean, I do remember us talking about it, because we did say we wanted to have an AP now that we had done the process recently, but I don't remember. I mean, we obviously didn't approve it in June, at least. So would be good to see, or maybe make that change for the future now that we're changing it anyways. So.
Yeah, it would not be a great thing to find ourselves at the last minute bound by an AP we hadn't even looked at or hadn't changed. It had changed.
we'll do some research on that. That's a little bit distressing that it might have not gone through the process. Michael will check on it. So yeah, we'll definitely research that. Some boards who have a process, they just put it in their BP just because of general purpose, that their board policies are what this is your hire. And so that's the point of this piece, is that you could put it in board policy and feel okay.
I feel that way, that might be the best move to make for us. So, and I know we probably want to get this approved and done with pretty soon, this summer, September the latest probably. So whatever we need to do to get this to the board, and then through the process to approve the new version, and we can get going. So
Yeah, I'm certainly okay with putting it in the BP.
Okay. And what else, what other changes would you like us to make? Some of those that you requested, maybe including board members, or do you want, like the FAN representative, we've got the adjunct, we can make sure that gets put on there.
Yeah.
No, I think all of your suggestions, Dr. Murillo, are appropriate.
I agree.
And the ones that have been added as well.
Yeah, you got to make sure you have a committee of 22 to intimidate the candidates.
Well, that is the problem, a problem. They get really large.
Yeah, but you know what? I got to tell you from interviewing that having a large committee and a good diverse committee is always such a joy to come into as a candidate. So, yeah, so that's, we'll draft it and we'll bring it back and start moving it forward. I felt this was very timely because I want to make sure that you're ready for your hire process.
Yeah, it's super timely, and the president will need to work with a group of 20 at president's cabinet and council and all the different groups they work with. So they have large groups to manage. They should be able to handle it.
There's one other issue that has come up in the past, and that is whether the board should be able to see the application pool the whole pool rather than just the final candidates. I don't know if you have any comments on that, Dr. Mario?
Well, I think Michael could comment too, because he's been in HR for a long time. I would say if you put two members of the committee, you're going to see the applicant pool. The two people that are definitely on the committee would see the applicant pool, and that would be appropriate. You don't really, I'm going to need to go look at this again. Michael, do you have any comments while I look at it real quick?
I'm trying to find the mute button on public members. Yeah, my personal experience is that this actually ends up being a lot more work than members of the community anticipate. I've had a couple of them when they saw the schedule of meetings and they've just kind of, whoa, this is a lot. But the whole theory is that it's important for everybody to be there if they're going to go all the way through the rating. We have discussed advisory type roles for committee members who may just share their observations as opposed to actually doing scoring. And that sort of releases a little bit of pressure on them having to be in every conversation the way the AP articulates. So I think there's a couple of ways of getting there, but I kind of agree with Dr. Murillo. The broader the participation, the better. This is a job that is just like a 360 spectrum. So
yeah, no, we haven't had a problem that I know of with the public saying I can't do. I mean, if they say they can't commit that much time, then they're not a member, and you find someone who can. But we haven't been short on finding someone, and we've had very good people.
Yeah.
What I was wondering is, especially if you put, say, 2 board members on the committee, they will have seen all the applications and so forth.
Yes.
So it seems fair that the rest of the board would be able to see that as well if they wanted, which they probably won't. But, in terms of
I don't see that as a
access,
problem. And then the other board members could advise the 2 on the committee their thoughts, maybe. Or
I don't know, we
you
might
have to
get
be
into
careful
a
with
Brown
Brown.
Act. Yeah, Brown Act thing there.
Right,
But I'm
and
just
then-
thinking after, I mean, the committee puts forward hopefully 3-4 candidates. And sometimes folks at the board level say, but that's all I'm seeing, and there were 40 of them.
Yeah, I agree. We should, once it gets to the final round, have the whole board get the whole applications and.
Oh, you mean the entire pool? Yeah, I don't think there's a problem with that either. Because again, you're doing it as a either in closed session or as a formal body. I understand what you're saying. It's like, okay, I see the 4 that the committee sent, but I'd really like to see what they had to choose from.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think at this level, that's important.
Thank you.
Would you like it in the policy? I mean, you want an articulate?
If that is the case, then I think we should put it in the policy because it has not been the case in our past efforts. And I think that the countervailing concern was that the committee might feel like we were not following their recommendations so much. But I don't think that's likely or, necessarily countervailing.
Yeah, in most, I've been hiring in the system for 25 years, and what I've normally seen is most people that rise to the top of it, do so appropriately. Although I'll have to say I've seen some weird things the last probably 4 years. But I think if we could put that in there for you, that would be good. You should have as much visibility as possible. The other piece I would recommend is that you do not make students have to go through the whole entire screening process, or because sometimes you lose students on that, and they really are valuable if you just have them sitting on the committee for the interview and the references. But making them go through the whole screening process, you lose students sometimes, and you lose the value of having students.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It could be really hard because we're already making them go to class and do homework and all these other things. And I mean, unless they get school credit for being on the committee, which I'm not.
If they want to, though, they shouldn't be precluded.
Right.
Oh, no, Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good
Okay.
experience for them and it's a learning experience, but we're not paying them to sit on these very onerous committees that our
Right.
faculty and staff are being paid for.
Right.
What about, this is something we've never done, so I'm just asking, what do you think of? What if the board had the ability to talk with the screening committee about the candidates?
I personally, I've worked with boards, that's exactly what we did.
We
Because
haven't. And maybe it would be helpful.
There's always like a curtain, a strict
Yeah.
bright white line between the committee and the board until the last. I mean, we never even interact with the committee besides appointing the two and then getting a report from the co-chairs once in a while on progress. But
wow.
Yeah, and you know, Dr. Maria has started meeting with the hiring committees in advance to let them know what she's looking for, which I'm sorry, sounds way too practical. That, you know, we actually should do that, right? I mean, if a committee isn't briefed on what the hiring body or manager is looking for, what are they looking for? So, assuming appropriate Brown Act protections, I would wholeheartedly support that.
Well, now going back to item 1, and what seems to be missing here is a process that we did do, which was develop the search parameters, what we, the board, are looking for and what our priorities are. And I particularly remember one where we were talking about different categories of priorities, and we went through a board member's ranking. You know, my first priority is this, and second, third, fourth, whatever. And Dean Nevins was sitting in the audience, and in his head, I think, he calculated them all up and told us what the averages were for the different listed priorities. In any event, he did it very quickly, and that was helpful. You know, so there really does need to be that step where the board meets and discusses and describes its priorities in the search, what it's looking for in its next president.
You know, one of the things that I would say that has been really helpful in some of the hiring processes is whether you get a consultant on or not, as you do that piece for the board, but then you also, 2 of the board members who would be sitting on the committee, go out and talk to the college community, like go to CPC and ask them, what are you guys looking for? And here, because what that does is it helps engage the college community and in their thinking and thoughts, and then the board getting together and setting sort of your priorities. Because sometimes what you find is actually everybody agrees that we need these things. And you've also engaged the college community in the process. So that's been something.
Sounds good to me.
I've seen. So we could write you something in your process to be inclusive of the college community and also for you to set your priorities and what you're looking for.
Not to mention that that's a real benefit. I think it's a benefit to the candidates if they look up the board meeting and see what the board was saying.
Right. Which is a good thing because
It's doing your homework.
apply if you don't match. Do
Yeah.
you know, do what you want. Everyone's welcome to apply. But yeah, this is all good. And does anybody want to bring up anything who's maybe been on this committee before or just in comment? I don't think I asked for public comment yet on this one. Anybody who's participated want to say anything? All right.
I do.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Liz?
Liz.
I just agree with you that you need to be very careful on your search committee. I mean, on your consultant.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think you should decide at the beginning whether or not you even want a consultant, and then be very careful on who you select. And I agree with having as much diversity on the selection committee as you can have.
Mhm.
But keep in mind that the faculty association would appoint the adjunct.
Mhm.
So there'd be another faculty, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But I agree about the consultant that you hire.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Anybody else who's had a similar experience on one of these committees want to say something, or you don't have to have had an experience? Anybody want to bring up anything? All right, sounds good. Well, we'll be hearing a lot about this topic in the next year. Let's go then to a new policy, which is 3.9, creation of board policy administrative procedure 3000, commitment to anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah, I think this is looking excellent and in line with what we have, it's building on our resolution 18 and going beyond it, a more permanent situation. But yeah, Dr. Maria, is there anything you want to bring up or ask us to comment on?
Okay, well, I'm sorry, Trustee Gallardo's not here because she was actually at the conference where Trustee Everett and I were also in attendance in a creating policies and procedures through an equity lens. And one of the recommendations that came through the group that spoke of trustees was that you ought to create a board policy around your commitment so that it is in board policy. And Vice President Coleman has gone and looked at other ones and put together, and she had to remind me that I'm the one who sent this to her originally, because I was like, oh, we've got a new policy. Where did that come from? And it was like, it came from what you had sent, So anyway, I think it's something that the board should consider. And we just thought we'd bring it here and see what your thoughts are about having a policy that actually says that you are committed to this and moving forward, and then we can get your input and suggestions on it and bring it back.
Thank you. Well, thank you, VP Coleman, for your work on this. Yeah, Marcia, do you have anything you want to bring up?
Well, again, I would tend to frame it in terms of student success. It's not that we are doing these things just because we're doing them as it's doing the kinds of things we're talking about here because it has a measurable impact on student success. It's not that we think it should, but that we feel it is justified by data and research and our experience in working with students. And I think that is a firm foundation where just saying we ought to do it is not as firm a foundation. That gets into the political arguments. That gets into the kinds of things that are really, in many ways, creating a lot of political friction in our society right now. And I prefer taking the approach that we recognize the diversity among our students and we need to help all of them succeed because that's our job. And that is not to contradict what we did in our 3.1, because I think that's part of our job too. And I recognize that there are folks who feel very differently about it. We've heard from them. But I think that those are choices that they are making. And what we have commented on has to do with providing a safe environment for our students to succeed and for our faculty, staff, employees, and community to live and thrive. So that's kind of my thinking.
Thank you. So basically adding the why or the goals behind this.
Yeah, framing it by the why and the goal, not just framing it as this is what we do, because some people feel very differently about it. And we are promoting, we hope, a culture that will be comfortable talking about diverse viewpoints.
Thank you. Yeah, and I see some mentioned, so we can expand on it, like the vision for success is mentioned and the goals of that, and those are all about student success. So I think we can just, yeah, expand on those things. That Liz, you have your hand up. You want to go?
Yeah, this will probably come up as we're discussing this later, but I just wanted to ask that when you come up with something like this, that you very clearly define terms that everybody agrees on what they mean. Because you hear a lot about equity lens and everything, but you need to really explain what you really mean by that. Because there's a lot of people on campus and there's a lot of discussion on this, but not everybody has the same perspective on what things mean. So I would hope that in policy it would be clear about that.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you, Liz, for bringing that important point up. That AP does have some definitions. It does not have that one, but I think,
And definitions that everybody understands and is on the same page with.
yeah, I
There's
think,
some ones that are used over and over again that aren't clearly defined for people.
Yeah,
Thanks.
along that line, I think statements that about white privilege are probably divisive. It's not that I disagree with it, but that I think that there are ways that we can describe concerns that we have without using words that are pretty divisive in the current environment.
Because we want to be inclusive.
We want to be inclusive and we want to be able to talk to each other in inclusive ways and diverse ways.
Because otherwise you have a lot of people that just don't want to talk about it at all.
Yeah. Or they get angry and don't want to talk about it.
That,
You know, I mean,
yep, that exactly.
We create division ourselves by the way that we might put something. So
Yeah, I agree.
So could I make a recommendation out of this in a way? Because I think I hear everything everybody's saying, and I agree with framing it around student success and also employee success. Because I think if employees aren't successful, neither will your students be. So I think that's kind of a critical piece of it. And maybe we should, because one of the things I was talking about with Vice President Coleman earlier today is when I first got here, I originally threw out there that we needed to define diversity, equity, and inclusion on the campus. But frankly, I got so wrapped up in just dealing with so many of the climate issues and trying to deal with issues that we never got back to it. I think the AP should maybe not come forward at this time, but maybe a board policy statement. And then let the AP work its way through as we as a college define diversity, equity, and inclusion for ourselves. What I experienced was doing that definition work in my prior colleges really helped people understand what it really meant and really gravitated to this. We agree, this is our, diversity means this to us. Inclusion means this to us. And I think that that's a process that the college should work on as it finishes its strategic plan. Thank you, Art. I see your hand going up, so.
thank you. And I think, I think that would be great to do. I think it would be good to get a strong BP to the board to approve. And then, yeah, the AP, we don't have to have right away. We can do what you're suggesting. So
right. I agree. I have one other concept that I feel like we haven't done much with, and I wish that we would. And it was, I was reminded of it when I was reading not too long ago about, I think it's Clark Kerr, who was president of UC Berkeley when there were the Berkeley protests, anti-Vietnam War, I believe, and First Amendment issues and all of that. And one of the things that he said was that we're not in the business of making ideas safe for students. We're in the business of making students safe for ideas. And I have to say, I agree with that. I really think we put a lot of emphasis on trying to talk about SBCC and what it wants to accomplish as an institution. And we forget sometimes that students aren't going to stay here their whole lives. They are going out into a world that is far more varied and contentious and difficult and so forth. And so that job of making students safe for ideas that they don't like, ideas that are hard to deal with, as well as the ones they like, of course. But I really wish we would do more with that. And perhaps that's something we can work into this as well. Because I do think that's our job.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. That's okay. I think we have some direction on this now. And we can move forward with refining it some.
I do think the board policy section as it is pretty good. And if some tweaks like we mentioned about like the goals and the why adding in, but I think it does lay out a clear policy for the college, and then we can go from there. So
Okay, thank you.
all right. Thank you. Let's go on to 310, which is Institutional Code of Professional Ethics. And I just wanted to note again, if anybody wants to raise their hand and do public comment or speak up, just raise your hand on the Zoom, and you don't have to necessarily wait, and I'll call you once it's your turn. So this one is Institutional Code of Professional Ethics. Lots of changes here. Is there anything of note for us?
I think the biggest change from the perspective of, and Michael, please speak up when you're ready, but I think from my perspective is that there is some mention of the fact that there are ramifications if you violate the board policy. I think I've noticed in the last 10 years that a lot of colleges are finally saying explicitly violating this policy, there are ramifications to it. So
Would agree. I think, whenever you start saying, discipline could follow, people get a little sensitive. They want to be sure that it's clear what potentially might be attached to discipline. Also, this is a little more explicit about the expectations, right? The prior one just sort of obliquely referred to the AAUB standards, but this is pulling them in and being very express. So I actually don't have a problem with that because they were incorporated by reference, but it's always better to be very specific as opposed to hiding the ball. And so what you've done is you've unhidden the ball here. So I'm fine with that. But yes, whenever you talk discipline, people want to, take a second look at it.
Okay.
Can you point to me where it is that we're talking about that? Because I'm looking at the one that's yellow, purple, brown, gray. Is that the right one?
Actually, that was not what I meant to go into this item. So I got to tell you, that's definitely not the one. I actually was including in this item the one that you as the committee, the Gender Equity Committee. So somehow this got mixed up. There was a sentence that you guys had recommended in the Gender Equity Committee about, and actually I thought I added it, but it's not in this agenda. So I'm gonna ask, I actually went in and made it, Joyce, in the file, and it's on, not the one that's uploaded here. This was not the one that, this is a draft of 7/18/14. This is this one with all of the color in it is not the one that I made an amendment to. It was more like the other draft.
Yeah, the one which is under 3.2 is on page 16 and 17 of the report of the committee. Is that the one you were looking at?
Yeah, that was the one. Plus I had actually gone in and put into the draft agenda in the file language about violation of this policy can lead to disciplinary or potential action. It was
That's
just.
what
a
I saw,
symbol.
actually. Yes, the consequences of unethical behavior.
Yeah, it was, but somehow it's not here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, there's a version of that in the original report, but you may have added to it, and I am not seeing that at all, so.
Okay, I apologize. This one was not the one that I intended to be in this agenda at all.
No problem. We'll meet again on this.
Okay.
Yeah, all good. So we can go then. We have 30 minutes. We can get a couple more maybe done in that time. So we've got now going backwards in the agenda to 3.3, which is financial aid. And so this one does have a good number of changes. Are there any that we want to focus on here? Or anything you want to look at?
I was confused, frankly, when I looked at the draft 5130 track changes, I think that was.
Kendra, this is the one that Paloma wants us to wait until the financial aid director returns so she can review it.
Okay.
Yeah, she wanted to pull that today because she wants the finance, because our financial aid director's out on leave.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right.
No problem.
But I mean, the concept that the committee originally had was simply the ones I reviewed earlier about the hiring procedures that should apply for student workers, and that equal pay for equal work should apply. And then that there should be concern for a student's financial need or preference for students that really need the money, not just any student. So I'm not quite sure how that dovetails, because this is a lot more stuff than that was in terms of the simplicity of what we had done.
Yeah, I agree, because that statement is down at the bottom of paragraph 3, but yeah, we'll bring this back when it's gone through the financial aid director. So
Okay.
I got a note on that this morning.
Okay, no problem. No problem. We can then do 3.4. A lot of these were, I think almost all of these, not all of them, but our ad hoc committee reviewed almost all of these. So there's a fair number of changes here, but it's short. So yeah, this is looking good to me, but is there anything anybody wants to bring up?
Let's see. Yeah.
We have one new requirement for our board, which is for us to do some training, which we do have in another policy.
Yeah, I think there's a problem with that, basically. I think that we have some difficulty as elected officials being required to complete training that goes beyond anything that is perhaps legally required. I think you can encourage it. I think you can hope that people will do it, but requiring it, I don't know. And with employees, I immediately think of the union contracts as kind of the touchstone of where that gets decided. I don't know. It's another one of these things where I'm looking at it from the point of view of, contribution to student success, not this is what we do because we think this, because again, there are folks who will disagree. Probably including Veronica, who is not with us today.
Thank you, Trustee Croninger. I do see that we have some of that language here, which is that we're dedicated to student success and committed to this culture, to anti-racist culture. I think we can definitely add in more information that having diversity and equity and inclusion in our employees supports our students more explicitly. But yeah, I think we always good to emphasize. We do have some requirements of our board, but there's none that are required. And this does say expected. I guess it does say expected there, but I don't know, maybe we can look at other ways that other boards have board education expectations and rules, and we can match it to that, because we do have a board training policy or board education policy. So
Yeah, we have that kind of a policy, and I think that, you know, including this kind of training in that policy would make sense to me, but as a standalone, boards have to do this, I think we might be overreaching.
Yeah. I do think though, you know, we could make requirements of ourselves though. And I think there's things like we do hire once in hopefully a while, but when we do hire, maybe that's when we do it like as a requirement, because it's something we want to make sure we're being fair in our hiring practice. I think that in that situation, maybe it could be more of a requirement than expectation. We're actually doing a hire.
Because some districts, and frankly, I worked for one. We actually required that everybody who was on a hiring committee went through EEO and implicit bias training.
Yeah, that I think works. I mean, I'm not concerned about that so much. It's when we spread it out to everybody, all employees and the governing board. What makes me feel more comfortable is encouraging it, offering it. And frankly, I think, you know, when you're talking about, let's see, commitment, diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism. Yeah, I mean, this is focused on those issues. But again, we're touching on the possibility of not being open to people who disagree.
Right.
And that worries me. I mean,
I mean, I think people are free to disagree, but you know, if they're expected to complete a training, I mean, some people might disagree with HR policies, but they are what they are too. And you know, you can't harass or have relationships with students. Well, someone might disagree with that, but that's their policy. Sorry, you don't have to work here if you don't like that policy that at anywhere you want to work at. I think that's something applicants have to assess for themselves. Like, do I want to apply here knowing this about the place?
But if you're grounding it in student success, you are going to have students, presumably, who have a different viewpoint. So I don't know. I mean, it's just a little troubling to me. I also am not quite sure. I mean, you could probably enlighten me here. We had to have a requirement that we get an annual report on the demographics of the college faculty and staff and new hires. So in terms of that diversity, I know what I am expecting. What are we expecting for a report on equity, inclusion, and anti-racism? Because it's now kind of conflated all together. Report annually on diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism professional development.
I think what it's saying is we'll get a report on the kinds of professional development, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism professional development that all employees are getting, and separately the demographics of the staff and new hires. So it's like two separate things. Like the 4 words are describing the professional development, not the demographic report.
We can clean that language up to be different. So what if we brought language like something to the effect of all employees who will be serving on hiring committees are expected to participate in anti-bias and EEO training prior to serving on a committee, and then some kind of language that notes that the governing board supports or encourages continued professional learning in the areas of diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism, so that it's a solid statement that says you're encouraging, but you're not forcing that issue along those lines. Would that be acceptable?
Yeah, I think it works for me. Both of them are probably elsewhere as well, although the specifics on what the governing board is encouraged to do, Jonathan mentioned the other policy, but it's probably not there in
Yeah.
terms of specifics.
It's not there, and maybe we can even put it in the superintendent hiring policy where we mention the governing board, is just move that section to there. So instead of us being here, this can be more for all the other employees besides the superintendent. So not mention the governing board here, but then have this statement in the superintendent one, which is before the board does its hiring of the superintendent, we'll do that training. That's just part of the process.
That's cool. We like that.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think we can do that. So we'll reword and rewrite this, and then we'll add the other language to the superintendent president hiring process. So we'll come back with some revised. You've really helped us a lot with your thinking.
Right, and then let's see, what else do we have today? We have time. Let's see, 3.5, student workers. Is there, what do we want to, there's a lot of new sections here. So is there anything to note? Dr. Maria?
So, originally the committee had made some recommendations on the student workers, which was what I originally was trying to work with. And I think one of the things that Vice President Coleman did was on the AP. I really liked what she did, bringing out the whole issue of the different sections of student guideline for student employment. I think this is something Michael's group needs to, and student affairs need to reflect on too, but do we like this idea of bringing in, making it more deliberate on students that we employ paid by district funds, and whether they are work study students or whether they're categorically funded students, because most colleges I've worked at, they've all been different hiring processes. So I think there's some validity in adding that. Do you want to add anything, Joyce, to why your methodology for including all of that?
I went back and reviewed at least 15 colleges for every policy that I reviewed at your request. And many of them in their APs, they broke it down by these kinds of categories. So you could be really clear on what the expectations are. And a couple places I left, well, at least one place I left a blank, because I, like on page 3, number 7, when we talk about equity, and I looked at some of the colleges who were really forward thinking in equity in the state, and they assigned they awarded their student workers some sick leave as part of their job assignments, as part of their employment. But I see we haven't been doing that, and I put that there and left it as a blank, because it's like, when we talk about equity, do we really want to look at equity in this perspective and make sure that our student workers are getting some kind of sick leave? Are they able to earn some sick leave? Which of course means budget and money, but equity means that.
You mean equity begins with compensation? Oh, what an idea.
The only thing that I would go back and put here is what Trustee Croninger said earlier, to exceed 100 hours of college credit, and make that a part of the board policy. But if I could just state here, sometimes our students who come in don't know what they want to be. So they end up exceeding the 100 college credits because they figure out at some point, this is what I want to do, but I need to go back and take these classes to be able to do that. So when we include the 100 hours, we kind of kick those students to the side, and equity kind of gets lost.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to that situation. The situation we were getting complaints about is students who had in fact graduated with 1 or more degrees and came back anyway. And so I feel like, and in particular for the, ability to stay in the United States, that just didn't seem like that's not our program. But I didn't want to distinguish between any particular student. So that's why I picked the 100 units, because that has been emphasized at the chancellor's office level.
Yeah,
I was just going to say also the preference for students who need the statement. I like that the AP has and is trying to lay out everything for somebody who wants to go to, you know, where can I find all the things I need to know? The things that I'm not sure are fully covered, and I may have missed it, is the idea that they are subject to the kind of hiring requirements we're talking about for everyone else in terms of, you know, diversity, equity, equal opportunity, and that the students who need it, the financial help the most, get preference. So those two, I think, need to come through clearly and probably at the beginning because they're threshold items.
Okay, I think you mentioned those two in the very beginning, so I think we have that down.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, if you're going to collect everything together that and say, oh, go look at AP 7270 to find out about this, then, you know, at least as a student, they may not look further.
Okay, so we're real clear on those two items, Joyce, that Trustee Croninger has mentioned. I think this is the second time she's mentioned them.
Yeah, I am. I took notes. Thank you.
Okay.
So I have a
Thank
question and a comment. Do we pay out sick leave? Like people who have a sick leave balance when they leave their job, do they pay? I mean, I know a lot of places don't. I don't know if we should, but
No, we do not. If you're a regular employee under PERS or STRS, your remaining sick leave balance is added to your service credit for your pension credit.
Yeah.
But we don't pay out remaining balances, only for vacation.
Okay, cool. I mean, yeah, if we did give the sick leave to students, which we all saw the last 2 years, how important sick leave is to keeping everyone else healthy. Yeah, we should not pay it out, but we should, so that they can be encouraged to use it if they want to. I don't think people should then try to bank their sick leave to get paid later. They should just take it. I also wanted to have another point, which is we have it on B3, which is students, workers are not part of the classified service and are not covered by the collective bargaining agreement between the district and its classified employees. That's obviously true. However, I would say that we should maybe make it really clear that it's, you know, that it's the agreement with CSEA and not preclude students from wanting to maybe seek collective bargaining arrangement themselves, which is legal now under the National Labor Relations Board. They rescinded a recent rule that had barred undergraduate student worker unions, which, you know, if they want to do that, I think we should not make it. I think the language is seems like it's precluded. They're precluded from doing that, but I think if we just made it clear that they're not covered under the agreement with CSEA, then maybe it might make them feel like, oh, we can do our own thing potentially. So.
Thank you. That's a really good point. I forgot about that happening recently.
Can I ask,
Please, yeah, please go ahead.
Trustee Abu, what number was that?
That was on B3 on the policy.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Liz, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think, Jonathan, the Ed Code defines what a classified staff is.
Okay.
And it doesn't include our short-term workers or the student workers. So that's why they're not included in our agreement. But they are able to form their own organization.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think maybe just people don't know that, you know, like regular people, like us here on policy committee, we all know that, but like someone who's a new employee, they might read that and
Most people don't know it.
yeah. So if we just gave them a clarification there a little
No,
bit.
I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to be sure it wasn't because we excluded them ourselves.
Of course, yes. No,
You
it's
just
just
can't
about-
include them by Ed Code.
Yeah, we'll clarify that statement, maybe put the Ed Code section in right there that defines it. I think that always makes it clear.
Yeah. That's good.
We can do that.
Okay. Well,
Liz, in the BP, it has student workers shall not supplant or replace classified employees. That works for you?
Yeah, and the short-term workers shouldn't either. But this is a student worker
This
section.
is a student
so,
worker section.
Yeah, no, they shouldn't. Because in a way, they're the same as if a short-term worker did it.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Right.
So thank you, Marcia, for bringing that up.
Okay, well, anyone else have anything else to say? Or else we can move on to the final one to review today before we end. Or actually, do we have any? Oh, we have one more item. Yeah, we have one more item, which is, I think we're moving now to 4.1, which is new board policy 3905 for safety and security if with a speaker who's coming on campus. So this is just for information, not for discussion today, but it is something that we will discuss at a future meeting. So be aware.
Yeah, we don't have an attachment on that, right? Is that
No, I
correct?
think it's just a topic, like we will just.
Okay, well, we did in the committee put forward a draft, which would be under 3.2, the ad hoc committee report.
Under the report, okay.
I think isn't that what you're referring to, Dr.
Yes, yeah, that's why it's in there, but I didn't think there was a draft. I'm sorry if I missed that. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
Sorry,
there
there was a
is,
draft.
Page 10.
Yeah, it's right there, page 10, BP 3905. So we'll bring that back to you. So take a look at it. If you have any suggestions between now and the next policy committee. I missed that you had a draft. I apologize. So I guess you had a situation where this came up as an issue and your group moved it forward. So if there's any changes you'd like to see to it before we put it into format, let us know.
Okay,
We were trying to make sure all the work that you did with that gender equity committee gets picked up and moved through, and with whatever new changes need to be made.
No, I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I did realize I just skipped one, which is 3.8, the prohibition of harassment. It's an edit, not a new policy. And it's including the option of mediation if as a resolution. So is there anything we want to discuss or bring up on this? It's a simple change. No.
I think
I
that's
think that-
Yeah.
That was something the committee had proposed too, I
Right.
think.
So if that looks good, then yeah, let's just move this one forward too. Okay, so we did get through the whole agenda, except for the
Incredible.
that wasn't ready, which is fine. We'll get to it next time. But yeah, this is great. Thank you everybody for a good meeting. And before we end, I think we want to have an August meeting at this point, right? So we will see a time around maybe this time in August or earlier to meet.
We'll poll you. I know Palmina will again, and appreciate her support on this. I just remind everybody, Palmina's doing 2 jobs right at the moment. So in so many ways. So just want to say thank you to her because she's like got everything being scheduled through her office. So
thank you, Palmina, and thank
Welcome.
you everyone who's been supporting that work here. So yeah, we'll see you all soon.
Right.
all right, thank you, and thanks for all the direction and positive input.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.